call the member for Holt.
Thank you, Speaker. Speaker, I rise tonight to speak about an amazing community organisation which I proudly acknowledge is based in my electorate of Holt, an organisation that has become a beacon of hope for many people in my area and in Victoria, which has been ravaged by bushfires, the COVID-19 pandemic and now flooding. This organisation has become synonymous with the essential Australian spirit of mateship and helping out those in need. I speak, of course, of the Sikh Volunteers Australia. On Australia Day this year, the Sikh Volunteers Australia was one of 4 local organisations to be awarded a 2021 Holt Australia Day Award for their response in supporting families in need during the COVID-19 pandemic. But given their ongoing efforts, which continue even as I speak here, I think it's appropriate to continue to acknowledge them. I want to talk just a little about their extraordinary work and the inspiration that they provide to us all. During those awful bushfires in late 2019 and early 2020, amidst the trauma, the grief and fear, the Sikh volunteers provided hope. Let me cite the words of a Victorian police officer whose job it was to evacuate those in the bushfire-ravaged areas. He says, "The community of East Gippsland was significantly displaced during the fires, with emergency relief centres set up to provide assistance to displaced people. In my role as a police officer, knowing the devastation the areas from Malakuta to Bairnsdale had endured, to see the Sikh volunteers on the ground providing hot meals to the community was a relief, knowing that the public and emergency service workers were being cared for in support of the emergency response." He says again, "This makes me so proud and demonstrates that each of us, no matter how small or insignificant we may feel, can and do things to change people's lives through care and compassion." Another example of the great works and feats of this group was experienced during the second lockdown in Melbourne last year, when 3,000 residents living in public housing estates, suburbs adjacent to the city, were placed into hard lockdown. The Sikh volunteers again sprung into action. A team of 12 volunteers went with their vans to the towers situated in Kensington and Flemington to deliver over 1,000 much-needed meals every day. They served vegetarian meals. For many, in fact, it was the first time in days that they'd been served a hot meal, and they continued to do so during the period of the lockdown. The Sikh volunteers believed that it was their duty to serve people when they were needed the most. They understood that these people in the towers were very vulnerable, and that's why they drove from Devon Meadows, which is something close to about 70 to 80 kilometres, to provide the help, support, food and hope. And they did that also to the frontline staff that were supporting the residents. Imagine being a resident of those towers, being under siege and seeing these great community activists and people with delicious, nutritious food and hot food that were there to provide support for you. Again, the Sikh Volunteers Association, as I said, drove over 70 kilometres. I looked at some of the stats on their website tonight before I spoke and was stunned to see that the SVA, the Sikh Volunteers Australia, had delivered in the period of time between 18th of March to the 31st of December 2020, 142,600 free meals for the needy during the COVID-19 crisis support period. It's just unbelievable, and they're doing this out of a large kitchen at the Sikh Community Gurmat Centre in Devon Meadows. Just absolutely amazing. Again, in the recent 2-week lockdown, the Sikh volunteers have been providing countless free vegetarian home delivery meals from the 28th of May to the 10th of June for elderly, single mothers, self-isolated, unemployed, international students, the homeless and those in need. And they were doing that on top of a service they've been running from February 21st, which serviced 7 council areas, including Casey, Frankston, Mornington Peninsula Council, Dandenong Council, Cardinia Council, Kingston Council and Monash Council, an ongoing service each week to help those in need in 7 council areas. Can I close again, Speaker, by quoting that police officer I quoted before, who eloquently summarises what our community feels about these fine Australians. The Sikh Volunteers Australia have personified the Aussie spirit, helping out our communities near and far during fire, flood, storms and COVID. When times get tough, this fine organisation stood up and still continuously stands up to this very day and demonstrates the best of humanity in trying conditions. They provided meals to all, ensuring that no one goes without, providing for some a glimpse that in some of these uncertain times the spirit of kindness and compassion is very much alive. Disaster always brings out the very best in people. This organisation has earned itself a place in the heart and soul of this nation And, Speaker, they certainly have, and I'm proud to speak about this group